to the video. John Beebe here with Redemptive Psych, and in this series we're exploring the archetypes of personality that each of us has, and depending on our personality, that archetype is going to be expressed through a certain function, a certain tool, or ability. Today we're talking about the sixth archetype, known as the critic. The theory is that this attitude, this archetype, is a little bit less conscious for us, but very effective in terms of how it affects our personality and how we communicate with self and others. Now, the critic is an extremely important function to be aware of because it is less aware for us, but it has potentially devastating effects or very transformative effects depending on how we use it, how we allow it to be expressed, and if we allow its inborn nature to take us over. Now, John Beebe, who articulated these archetypes in a lot of clarity, said that the critic function acted as a belittling and refusing function, and it sets limits both on self and others. The go-to attitude for the critic, for our critic, for other critics, is you are not blank enough. It is a demoralizing, belittling function, and it is hyper critical. Beebe did not actually call it the critic. He called it the Senex for men, which is like old man, and then the witch for women. The critic, I believe the phrase the critic actually captures the energy a little better and is a little easier to understand. Now, with this phrase right here, you are not blank enough, for the thinking critics, the ENTP and ESTP with extroverted thinking critic, it's externalized. You or that person are not smart enough. For the ENTP, this is more of a superiority thing where it's like that person does not have the capability to understand what I understand. That's more the temptation that that's with them when they harness the critic. The ESTP, even though they have the same critic, is a little bit different. It's more like, while it's still like you are not smart enough, it's more about capability. Like you're not smart enough to do that. It's mixed with competence. And with the ESTP, the critic has a certain wrath to it towards other people who don't think through things carefully, who make what they think is stupid mistakes, and it has a rage and anger to it, whereas the ENTP's temptation with it is a little more superiority. For the introverted critic, the INTJ, for the introverted thinking critic, this is the INTJ and ISTJ, this is more internal. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable of solving the problems. I can't think through things that well. Now, it's important here to realize that while an extroverted function, in this case an extroverted critic, is more about other people, it can also attack oneself, just as an introverted critic, while it's mostly about oneself, can externalize to other people. So yes, the INTJ and ISTJ can use their TI critic to almost like a TE critic, where it's saying like, I am so critical of my own problem solving, and you haven't put a single thought into it. So that that rage or that belittling can be directed outward for them as well. For the feeling critics, extroverted feeling critic and introverted feeling critic, it's more about value and worth. For the ENFP and ESFP, they have extroverted feeling critic. It is criticizing the worth of other people. They are not worthy enough. You are not good enough. They are not careful with how they express their emotions. They are not careful with how they articulate their morals. They are not helpful. That is another way FE critic is expressed. It is a criticism of others' worth. When these types get a little more mature, that critic for the ENFP and ESFP turns on themselves a little bit more to refine their own values. But by default, similar to TE critic, there is a temptation here for superiority because ENFPs and ESFPs can put down others, but it's more in terms of worth and good or badness rather than intelligence. Next is the FI critic. This is the critic for the INFJ and the ISFJ. Now, just as FE critic is external worth, FI critic is internal worth. I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not blank enough. And it's a constant state of them dealing with this energy that is almost accusing them of not being good or worthy enough. Now, their path to maturity is realizing that their standards for themselves are extremely high. And one thing that INFJs and ISFJs can really benefit from with FI Critic is asking themselves, what are the reasons why I'm not worthy enough or not good enough? That makes them get specific about it, and then they start to articulate a reason, and it's like a ridiculous standard, and that is just a tactic that can help release some of the tension with the critic. But in general, they are extremely critical of their own worth and their own use. It's also a function about utility. That person is useless, I'm useless, etc. Extroverted intuition critic, that's the critic of the ENFJ and ENTJ. This is about other people's intentions and choices. They themselves are very careful, or think themselves to be very careful about their own choices and their own decisions and their own future in terms of the path that they pursue. And they see other people, from their perspective, living recklessly and living without intention. So they dismiss other people's decisions as that's a bad choice. Or it's not decision as much as it is path. That's a bad intention. That's a bad path. That's a bad this or that. It's almost a putting down of other people that, hey, you are not capable of picking something that's actually good, that's actually going to benefit us or others in the future. You lack the foresight to move yourself or anyone else forward. Now, in all these cases, but especially with any critic, it is a case of incredible projection where the ENFJ and the ENTJ projects their own mind onto a person and says, well, if I was in that situation, I would do this, this, or this. But they lack other input. They don't know what that person has been through necessarily. They don't understand exactly what that person is actually intending. They make a lot of assumptions. Now, any critic can also be extremely helpful once it lets go of some of that accusatory nature and articulates specific reasons why a particular path might be dangerous or not as worthwhile as one may think. Next is NI critic. This is the critic of the INFP and the INTP. NI critic accuses the INFP and INTP of living unintentionally and not being able to make a good choice. It doesn't really let them make a choice very easily. It doesn't let them want something very easily because they can see all the ways that might go bad or might go wrong or might be irresponsible. So NI critic is like, you are incapable of picking something. You're incapable of picking a path or an opportunity. And part of it also, as I'll get to in a moment, is a regret where these types perhaps remember times where they've missed opportunities because of their hesitance to choose. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, as is the nature of all critic functions, that if I believe I'm incapable of choosing a good path or incapable of seeing the opportunities when they're there, they'll sail me by and I'll be living in regret and self-loathing potentially for years to come. Next are the sensing critics. Extroverted sensing critic. That is the critic of the ESTJ and the ESFJ. This is very critical of the environmental and the presentation of other people and the performance and the capability of other people. ESTJs and ESFJs look at people who are kind of a total mess or haven't put themselves together or haven't put in the amount of work that they think is necessary to become good at something, and they often judge those people for being unkept or not being good enough or being lazy. That's their big criticism. It's also when people act in ways that are sort of unpredictable and not necessarily appropriate to the setting, they can really dehumanize those people because they're not matching to the ESFJs or the ESTJs expectations of how someone should be, because extrovert sensing is how other people should act or should be, what they are doing. Now, as they mature and get a little bit less feisty with their critic, they start to see why someone is a little malkept or isn't actually putting in the effort that it takes. And they can refine their criticism to be more like constructive criticism, where they pick a few things to address with the person perhaps, and then see how they react. And then they will be surprised at a number of people who are grateful for pointing out some of their flaws and shortcomings and are willing to finally be taught by the ESTJ and ESFJ of how to perform, how to dress, and how to be. Then lastly is introverted sensing critic. This is the critic of the ISTP and the ISFP. This is about my own experience, my own duty, my own strength. SI Critic sort of accuses the ISTP and ISFP of not being hardworking enough, not being routine-oriented enough, being lazy, not putting themselves together. It's a kind of an assault on their work ethic. Now, the way that this affects other people too is because it's critical of their own experience. It takes someone who's particularly skilled or precise for the ISTP or ISFP to be like, you know what, that was actually a good experience from that person. So this can make them very hard to please in terms of things that are affecting their own personal experience. Now, again, this is not a super conscious function, so the ISTP and ISFP are oriented more by giving other people an experience with their parent, but when the critic is more active, they can be super critical of the things that other people do that affect them. But this can also turn them into be incredibly hardworking and diligent and detail-oriented people, especially usually later in life. So I gave you a snapshot of how all the critic functions are expressed through the 16 types. Through this lens here of the critic's kind of go-to phrase or attitude is you or I are not blank enough, not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, not practiced enough, not disciplined enough, etc., etc. Now, for this last part, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here to some very important, big picture things to understand the critic. The critic, in my opinion, is the most misunderstood of all the functions. Why? Because it comes across quite nasty. It comes across, it's basically the embodiment of an old person who's kind of bitter and regretful and looking at life as a has-been. That's its natural energy. If any of you guys have worked in nursing homes or been around a lot of old people, you know what I'm talking about. There is a tendency for them to look at everything as cynical and as less than it should be. Now, why is that? Why is the critic like that? It's actually because it's sort of it's an innocence that has been lost. It is an ideal that has been broken. The critic, in its deepest nature, actually has a little bit of the child in it, for reasons which we will get to later. Meaning that underneath all that spiky and thorny ways that it expresses itself is this little innocent thing that is hoping for a better world. The reason it's saying, you are not blank enough is because the critic, all of our critic functions, and an old person in general, is aware of how the world could have been or could be, and sees all the potential that's going to waste, of people not thinking carefully enough, or doing the research enough, or working through their values enough, or working through their future enough, or working through their actual day-to-day habits enough. They see all the ways that those are being left in the dust, and that those perhaps are the answer to a better world, but that they are being neglected. And that is what the critic is most worried about and believes in, that other people are neglecting either themselves or others within a certain area. They're neglecting a very important attribute. Now, it says in Joel that your old men will dream dreams. This is taken out of context, but this sentence in of itself encapsulates the innocent nature of the critic that precedes the bitterness. It is existing in a dreamy state. The critic is one of the most idealistic of the functions, probably with the child first or second. The critic at its deepest nature is idealistic, and it has been like a child that's gone through life and all its naivety has been crushed, and all that's left is the distant hope of a better future mixed with all the experiences of difficulty and the temptation to become bitter and accusatory. The critic is the place where we have the biggest temptation to become accusatory. Just like the devil is named, one of his names is the accuser. And one of the reasons why is because here within our idealism lies also our superiority. And this is, I talked about that with the ENTP, with TE critic. But the critic itself, as it manifests in us, gives us or others the temptation for superiority, and thus the justification to accuse, to belittle, to be cynical. But its nature, again, is a little bit more innocent. Cynicism is an embodied skepticism that acts as a defense mechanism to not be hurt again. As a self-reflection exercise, taking both these things, your critic will dream dreams, and the critic's accusatory phrase, you are not blank enough, you as in yourself or others, you can use these to think through how your critic has, how you, through your life experiences and the things that you believe and feel, affect your critic. And also, at the root of it, what are the dreams that are being pushed down and not given the opportunity to manifest or be pursued? For example, with FI critic, if an INFJ or ISFJ starts to investigate themselves a little bit, they are aware that there is a world in which the things that they are doing are perfect and beautiful. I think Plato, who many think is an INFJ, it's possible with the world of forms and the perfect versions of something. That is the dream of an FI critic, that there is a world out there that can be better. When the critic lets go of some of its, frankly, ridiculous expectations and standards, it can embrace the next best thing. It's like that quote, don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. And a wise person will use their critic to pursue what's good, because what's good is better than nothing. It's much better than nothing. And the critic learns that that is okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, guys, that's the critic. Hope you guys enjoyed. This is, in my opinion, the most consequential function. I won't necessarily say it's the most important. That is up for debate, though some days I do believe it is the most important. So that is the sixth function. We'll return in the ensuing weeks to finish off this series with the trickster and the demon. So hope to see you there. Thanks for stopping by. See you later.